Welcome to a very pleasant but brisk morning here. Is where I am, outside of Washington, D.C. Coming to you live from the Beis Medrash. There's nothing great to be accompanied by Rav Yosef Karo, Moshe Feinstein, and the Rambam himself, Moshe ben Maimon. Right? And of course, a good translation of the Mishnah over there. I don't actually use those translations. I don't know why they keep them here in the Beis Medrash. Should do an overhaul. But let's not deal with that, such trivial things. Let us deal with more important things, like how in this chapter we will explain, well, not we, but the Chofetz Chaim will explain the causative nature and relationship between constantly being full of pride, being haughty. The word is hergel hagava, being accustomed to feeling like you're important. So what does that mean? So continuing our discussion, which we started in the previous section, there was 6 different things that contribute to wanting to say Lashon Hara. We are now at pride. So what instills a motivation in us to speak Lashon Hara when it comes to our pride? What does that mean? First thing is, you think you're smart. Yet you're the man amongst the men, and everyone else is beneath you. Those are his words, not mine. And therefore, you feel content in your heart to say something and to be somewhat spurious, act somewhat spuriously towards your friend. It also, this pridefulness, brings you to being jealous, and to annoy and antagonize your friend, especially if he is more dignified than you among other people in the city. And you continue to act jealously and to act treacherously against them in an accusatory way, in order that they should be diminished from their honor. And you'll tell yourself privately, were it not for him, I would be the most important. And a person should look in the deepest, darkest parts of themselves. And you should look at it to know what you want to, what are you saying about yourself inside yourself, if those things that you're debating internally are true or false, in order that you reduce that person's name amongst other people, and to try to lift yourself up above them through your actions, and through that to humiliate them and to embarrass them. And through this, you're going to activate the 4 parts of Chashmal, right, which we mentioned last time, which was right at this was the last parts of it, which are Hanifa, right, which is flattering people, Sheker, being deceitful, Misapre Lashon Hara, saying the nasty stuff, and Leitonim, and just being absolutely clownish. Okay, so that's the end part of it. Okay, that's sort of like the tail end of the pride. You drag along these 4 dingbats with you. So you're gonna say terrible things about your friend, and that you should make yourself honored and your friend lowered. And you'll continue to say bad things about them because you don't feel like he's important to you. And you'll continue to honor yourself in the falsehoods and the levels which are undeserving. And you're going to flatter yourself to the wicked, and they're not going to learn from what they did wrong. And that way, because if you did that, they're going to think you're worse too. It's like Haman and his friends, which I'm saying outside of the, I'm making that comment externally to the words of the Chofetz Chaim. Haman's friends were with him while he was on his way up, and when he was on his way down, they told him where they should hang him. So therefore, says the Chofetz Chaim, one who wishes to purify himself from this bitter sin, from this bitter behavior, they should constantly look at how great is the lowness of pride. He uses that distinction in the language. So how could a person lift themselves so much over another person that, especially when he himself comes from the most lowliest, tiniest, putrid drop, who's thinking that he himself is something better than this guy, and he's done when he starts at a putrid drop and he ends in the dirt, turning back into worm food. And then it gets consumed by those things. So let's also look at the actual form of this sin, because it is one of the negative averos listed in the 613. Because it says, this is in Devarim 8:14, and you will raise up your heart and forget Hashem your God. And this is actually a statement made in the book Sefer Mitzvos Gadol. And the rabbis say in the Talmud, this is in Sota 4b, that any person who has any inclination to raising their spirit over others, they are more like one who worships an idol than anything else. And when such a person invites themselves to aggrandize themselves in this world, okay, then what's really happening is that his name is being lost and reduced and is going to nowhere. And his own body is being hollowed out and made shameful amongst other people. A person should understand how terrible is the sin in this world and in the next in engaging in this action, which is, Gemara says this in Sukkah 29b. There are 4 things by which regular homeowners go to the lowest places of the underworld, in the spiritual underworld, right? So one of them is haughtiness, and he leaves it at that. It also says in Sota 5a that someone who engages in this haughty behavior, and this one's not using gava, he's saying gasus ruach. He is fundamentally equating those two behaviors. That the idea of aggrandization is that you also overinflate your own spirit. So what's going to happen is that at the end it's going to be reduced. And he quotes the story of Rav Chisda in that same Gemara, that any person who has this haughty spirit, God says the following about him: we can't last in the same world. And then they quote Rabbi Elazar, right? These are all little axioms that are being quoted here. The Gemara quotes Rabbi Elazar that any person who has this same haughtiness, his dirt will not even be shuddered ever so slightly in the resurrection of the dead. Okay? The idea is that this person has no place in the next world. Where was I? Oh, and this action is actually tit for tat, mida keneged mida, right? It's actually equivalent justice, because since such a person thought he was always so important, the idea is that he's going to go to a place where he's super unimportant, except for to be worm food and to rot and to not be lifted up. And a person should not think like this, because on the highest of rocks and the highest of points, that is what a person should look to attain to, okay? And look to the high and wide open spaces, and he can go and live in those places more so than any other person who'd be around him. And so then at that point, when his body returns to the earth, then at that point that part of himself will never be moved. Then he's at his reached his highest point, the highest he's going to get, and people will all rise up and stand on their feet, and he's going to be there not moving, okay, underneath everyone's feet. This person who sought to lift himself up above other people during his lifetime. And in this way, he also sought to aggrandize himself in the eyes of Hashem. As we say in Mishlei, that Hashem absolutely rejects those who are of a haughty heart. Therefore, when one reflects upon the greatness of Torah mitzvos, okay, and how much effort needs to be put into acquiring them, how much you lack of those things, you would have no reason to try to be haughty. This is as the rabbis say themselves, the Gemara in Adarm 41a. Okay, so one who is missing this, meaning missing Torah, what does he get? Okay, it says if he has a little bit of Torah and a little bit of good deeds, when he really thinks about himself, that he is not going to even get a half or a third of what he could have accomplished had he applied himself to acquiring wisdom. Especially when Hashem had given him the ability to acquire so much so. A note is interpolated over here. Chafetz Chaim enters a note here, and he says, the holy books say the following analogy. It's a quick one. And I saw this in the book, Zichru Toras Moshe. So we will never really know how someone else's status regarding the sin until we go through the resurrection. Which makes sense. I agree with your question. I agree with the premise. And then I would expand on that to say, I answer that affirmatively. And I would say that that's exactly the point, that that person doesn't experience resurrection because he's basically going to be left underfoot. That would be the problem with it. Now, to say that a person has lots of good deeds and so on, just because they were haughty or whatever, doesn't mean that they have nothing to bring them to Olam Haba. But still, one should see that perhaps maybe when they get to Olam Haba, they would have to experience this pain and suffering first. Try to avoid it. The idea is that these things circle around. They come back to you. They ruin your legacy. They ruin how others perceive you. They could potentially impact your family. But certainly, whatever reward you've gotten in the next world will be impacted. But on to the little story that the Chafetz Chaim brings from the book, Zichru Toras Moshe. So this certain wealthy person, okay, and he was wealthy, he was a merchant, and he sends two men somewhere to go buy some precious stuff for him, some precious jewelry. And so he gives one guy $1,000 and the other he gives $100. And guess what they do? They blow all their cash. Okay? And so then all they have left between the two of them is 240 pieces. 200 to this guy and 40 to that guy. And then they start fighting with each other. The first guy says to the other guy, hey, how can you even get yourself in this conversation? You're poor. You barely have a quarter of what I do. And the other guy says, that's insane. That's foolish. And that's very, it's very haughty of you. What's your big deal? This money, not to neither of you does the money belong. And you were simply a messenger to deliver the money on behalf of somebody else. You were both poorer than each other. And so, you only owe about, and look at how much debt you've accrued, basically. You only owe 60 pieces, and this guy owes him 800 pieces. So what will you say to the person who sent you when you've lost so much? Won't you going to be embarrassed? Won't you be humiliated? And this guy's just, you're saying he's just a poor person? So that's the example given. The Chafetz Chaim returns to the main point. So that's what we're talking about, which is that we are really the shluchim. We are the representatives of the one who bestows mercy upon us, to Hashem, basically. He gives something to this, and he gives something to that. Okay, and basically, the idea is that we should recognize how good this thing is, and not try to increase our superiority over somebody else, because all of it comes from Hashem. So instead, one should think about how many days and years you've been neglecting your Torah and your mitzvos, and you'll have to explain for everything that you're missing when you finally come to the end of days, like the guy who squandered the most, 2/3 of 1,000. And he brings another story over here. This is from the book Pardes, Pardes, from the Maharam Cordovero, which is of Moshe Cordovero. And it's from the gate known as HaLashon, which we're not going to explain right now, and it's chapter 2 in there. Okay, just know it's a book that's kind of like Kabbalah oriented. So there are 4 holy angels that are shaped like beasts, okay? And one of them is named Uphiel, okay? And Uphiel carries all the keys to wisdom. And when the person's spirit rises up and reaches that level, then that archangel is the one who asks you about all the wisdom you have acquired in the earthly realm. How much did you invest in your Torah? How much did you pursue it? And how much reward do you think you should get for it? I'm sorry, not how much do you think you should get. And then I'm assuming the angel is going to give an accounting of how much you should get for it. And if a person was able to learn Torah, especially lots of Torah, and didn't take that time not to do that, so then that angel, he goes, he squishes him down underneath the holy place, and he pushes him down in a way to humiliate and embarrass him. And so that way, when all of the fiery angels, the seraphim as they're called, that live under the Merkava, the chariot that carries the presence of Hashem, okay, and the ones who carry them, they have their wings, and each one of their wings touch each other, and they're going to see this neshama, this person, squished down, and it will be set on fire by them, and it'll be burned up, and some of it will be left untouched. And so too, every single day, even though you have lots of good deeds, since you didn't learn Torah, this is your punishment. Okay, so what do we learn from this? Therefore, says the Chafetz Chaim, the description of the haughty man at the beginning of chapter 14 seems to describe Moshe's cousin Korach perfectly. In many ways, yes, Korach wanted to get himself to be recognized by believing his cause was just, that somehow Moshe was misrepresenting Hashem and believed his cause was just. This is true. Therefore, the Chafetz Chaim says to conclude here on our chapter, a person who is set on being reflective and to consider the things that he does for his entire life should take heart, just like it says in the work Tana Devei Eliyahu. It says the following, that a person should always hold on to everything that he's learned, in order that the shame and humiliation that others would want to place upon him not reach him on the day of judgment. And because at the moment when they say, stand up and recite all the Torah you have learned and all the Mishnah you have learned, you'll be able to do that. And that's what that last angel does, says for you. And so that is how the haughtiness can impact one's own reflection in this world. Okay, so we're going to move on in more on these things. We'll talk about next time the sense of hefker, when you just abandon everything and nothing's of value to you, and also the yeyush, also the leaving things as appreciating nothing, assuming them as worthless, how they will impact the way we approach our own conduct. Till next time, have a wonderful day.